Along with the Nebraskan pioneers who lived in poverty, so too did their priests, men who came with little or nothing to provide faith on the frontier. Due to the impoverished conditions of pioneer life, Catholic communities often struggled to provide for their priests' needs. Father John Blaschke arrived in Olean on August 30th, 1877. He had been told there was already a parish house for him to live in, but there was not. Because there was no sacristy nor another room in connection with the church, I placed my poorly constructed bed on the gospel side, and on the epistle side near the confessional, I placed my writing table. This was a highly inconvenient place to live, also improper, especially because the Blessed Sacrament was in the church. There was no stove in the church, and at that time, some days were sensitively cold. Sometimes it seemed my situation was unbearable. Father Blaschke could not build a dwelling himself, as he had no means to travel to obtain the ordered supplies from West Point and Schuyler. The farmers could hardly take time away from harvest to assist him. When a place was finally built, he said, "Now I could, thanks be to God, move into my own building, even if it was only a fourth part established. My great happiness was that I no longer had to freeze in the church." By now it was late in November. The first resident pastor of St. Jane Frances de Chantal in Randolph was Father Albert Hork, who arrived in 1894. Hard times had hit the community, result of drought, grasshopper infestation, and crop failure. The small congregation therefore found it difficult to support a pastor. Sensing this, one Sunday morning, Father Hork packed his belongings, put out the sanctuary light, and announced that he was leaving. The congregation passed the hat and collected a small amount of change to buy him a few groceries. Father Hork decided to give it another try. Seeing what little those priests had makes my inconveniences as a priest today seem small. Split among so many parishes, at times I feel like what Jesus said, "Foxes have dens and birds of the sky have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to rest his head." And this was the experience of the first apostles and also the first priests in Nebraska. At first, most communities did not have churches. Mass was often said in homes, as Father Blaschke relates. Sometimes Father Ewing from St. Charles also held church services at the private home of Mr. Peter Schad, one of the earliest settlers on Maple Creek. But then a messenger had to ride around and inform the people of this happy message and to invite them to the services. Yet more the need was felt for a priest in sickness. Then one had to travel a great distance so that the sick person could take part in religious consolation. Priests traveled many miles over the course of months to visit the multitude of settlements that they served, traveling on the Missouri River, walking, or on horseback. In those days, ministers traveled horseback and carried their blankets with them and hauled up on the wild prairies wherever night overtook them. Father Jeremiah Tracy did not just remain in St. John's City once it was established in 1858, but he used it as a home base for visiting other Catholic settlements along the Missouri River, from Council Bluffs and Omaha all the way to Fort Randall in South Dakota. Prior to 1881, the community in Norfolk was cared for by the pastor in West Point. In 1881, Father Thomas Carney became Norfolk's first resident pastor, but as he was the only priest in northeastern Nebraska west of West Point, He labored also in Battle Creek, Tilden, Oakdale, Clearwater, Frenchtown, Pierce, Plainview, Creighton, Verdigris, Spencer, Wayne, and Stanton. As a result of the journey of faith, many of today's priests serving the rural family of parishes will also be traveling greater distances. For example, Family Parish A covers 20% of the land area of the entire Archdiocese. Parish families B and C are some 70 miles across from parishes on each end. Parish family C priests will average over 100 miles a weekend just for masses alone. Certain pioneer priests covered settlements of greater distances, of course, but did so over longer periods of time. Priests then and now do their part in traveling to find those in need of Christ's sacraments. As Father Peter Gannon, founder and editor of The True Voice, wrote in a 1928 edition of the paper, "The pioneer priests of early Nebraska were men of strong character and indomitable will. In the face of many discouragements, they went forward and built better than they knew. The early settlers of Nebraska were for the most part poor. With them, their priests endured hardships and privations as the ordinary condition of existence. In times of crop failure and in times of the grasshopper visitation of the 1870s, they literally starved with their people. They have left a heritage of vigorous faith in this section that is full of promise for the future. Religion today in Nebraska is flourishing. 70 years ago, it was but a puny plant in the wilderness. The growth and prosperity today is due in a large extent to the labors and sacrifices of our pioneer priests. To them let credit and honor be given."